Merch alert.
That's right, you heard her. We have merch now. If you're looking for a mug, a hoodie, a shirt, a blanket, we're your people. Be sure to check out our exclusive I Was a Bravo fan before Scandoval tees. They will be perfect to wear while watching the VPR reunion.
Check out the link in the description of the podcast or our Instagram bio.
Hello, hello. This is Aaron, and we are Bravo. We're Black. Unfortunately, Kaya is not with us right now. She might pop in the future, but in the meantime, I am joined by Dana from the I Take Bravo Very Seriously podcast. I'm so excited to have her. Um, all things Bravo, you've been posting. We're under the same network. We're literally
hmm
siblings. How has your experience been so far on the Hurrdat network?
I've really been enjoying it, especially the YouTube aspect. So for anyone
Hmm.
who doesn't follow our YouTube channel, everyone go over to Hurrdat Entertainment and subscribe.
Yes.
It's so great over there because you can see all the shows. So my experience with Hurrdat has been so fun to be able to watch all the different shows on YouTube. You've got Vicky's show, you've got your show, Morgan's Pop Talks. So it's just been so fun to be part of a network where you can watch all these fun shows. All the shows are really, really great. Most of them are Bravo related, so gotta love
Hmm.
that. And just everyone's been so nice and welcoming, and it's just been like a nice small network where you're all sort of family, like you said. We're siblings, you and I.
I love that. I love that.
Dana
And
Marcellus.
I love that we I love that we also have the same love. Like most of us are doing Bravo. Like some of us are doing other stuff, of course. But even the people who are venturing off into other topics, we still have a love and appreciation for Bravo.
Right.
So what show was it that got you into this whole Bravo universe?
I would say Vanderpump Rules. Someone had
Okay.
originally recommended Beverly Hills to me. I had tried it. It didn't really appeal to me, the age group, I don't really know. But then Vanderpump Rules was proposed to me, and I just fell in love with it because it was
Mhm.
so out there to me. Like, basically, every season starts with a cheating scandal, and at the end of it, it was true, right? That's what happens at the end of every season is
Yeah.
deny, 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 and it turns out to be true, and I'm always shocked. And I just really, really always loved the show. So when Scandoval happened, I just sort of felt alone in it because I'm actually from Toronto, and no one in Toronto likes Bravo. So it was such a time in history for me, but nobody cared. So that's when I sort of found this whole community so that I
Right.
could share it with somebody else and talk about these things with somebody else. And that's what's been so great about the fandom.
Yeah, and Scandoval was such a big thing. Like I
hmm
remember it happening, and we like honestly, I don't know about Kay, but for myself, I never imagined it would blow up and be this big. Like once I heard the
hmm
news, I thought it would be one of those things that just kind of happened, and then we've seen it play out on TV. But I didn't think it would just be this huge. It was like a movement almost.
It really was. Do you remember where you were when you found out? Because I feel like it's one of those moments, like Princess Diana, like you know where you
Mhm.
were. So do you know where you were when you found out about Scandoval?
I want to say I was in the kitchen cooking. Like, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure if I can remember correctly. Like, and then someone sent me this whole article about it, and I'm just like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
and then I know Kaya posted something on our page, and then I seen that, and I was just like, wait, what? Like, what is going on? What is happening? And I just never guessed in a million years that it would be Raquel.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely seen this for Tom, but I just didn't think the other woman would be Raquel.
Right. Especially because it was so open and brazenly done, right? Like they were hanging all
Yeah.
over each other all the time in public, so no one ever thought they were actually doing it. I think I was at work. I think it was 4 p.m. on a Friday, and someone had sent me an article, one of my colleagues, I think. And I'm just like, no, no, that's not true. That can't be true. And then Jeremy Maddox, I think, was the first person to say
Mhm.
something because there was some article that was posted and he commented, like, I hate both of those pieces of shit or something like that. And I'm like, wait, this is true. This is really happening.
Oh my gosh. And like, were so you're saying that you were surprised that it was Raquel as well?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I'm like, that's not true. That can't be true. That can't be true.
Let's be a bit messy. Like, if not Raquel, who would you think? Like, if they didn't give a name?
Oh, oh gosh. I mean, Billy Lee, then I guess, because who else would have been
Ooh.
sort of around at the time that was even like available? to him? Because I mean, we also don't know their entire friend group because they have this friend
Yeah.
group that we see, but there is this whole extended friend group of like 50 plus people that are outside of what we see on TV. If you take the time to look at the background scenes in old Vanderpump shows, old Vanderpump episodes, like when there are parties and stuff, there's a
Hmm.
good 20 to 30 people you will see over and over and over again. So there are more
Yeah.
people to this group. And Tom did say something once when it was in season 10 when Schwartz was trying to make the argument that like you know, it's unreasonable that to not kiss Raquel. Sandoval said it's not realistic to expect us to go outside of this friend group. How can that be? I understand that LA is small, but how can that be? Like, how can that be? There is no one, there are no
Yeah.
women outside of this friend group, so it is unreasonable to expect people to move outside of this friend group. I have a hard time believing that.
I do too. Like it is surprising that they feel that way and then move that way. But I'm like I said, I'm not surprised because I feel like every season we kind of see them in a group and we
Mm-hmm.
might see like maybe one or two new people, but for the most part, it's just them. It's always
Mm-hmm.
been just them.
Yeah.
Like people come and go, but they sometimes they even end
Right.
up coming back. What did you think about this latest season of Vanderpump Rules? And are you excited for the return?
It wasn't a great season. I think we can pretty much all
Mm,
agree on that. It's very fractured. I have been thinking a lot about this just because we did get a lot of Vanderpump in the news last week, albeit almost nothing in terms of actual substance. We didn't actually get anything. That
right.
being said, I think we do need a season 12 to just finish things up because I feel like it would be weird for it to just end right now. Um, I guess without finishing storylines, but I don't really see how it can ever continue in its real form because I think we all have to remember what this show was at its core, which was about a group of friends that worked together at a
Yeah.
restaurant, that were poor, that were actors, that would sleep with each other and were friends with each other and would cheat on each other. And now it's a bunch about a bunch of 40-year-olds who aren't friends with each other, and that's not interesting, right? So I think the idea of
Mm.
it is at its core is still very interesting, and I'm sure you've heard about them going out and doing like sizzle reels and like interviewing people that work at Lisa Vanderpump's restaurants and stuff. And I do think the idea of Vanderpump Rules with a new cast could work if you just find the right grouping of people, but I don't think it's this group of people anymore. They have no reason to go to Sir. Like, why are you going to Sir?
Yeah, I can see that. I just don't want you know what I think it is, and I'm afraid of like I don't know if you've seen Vanderpump Villa, the spinoff
A
that they did
couple
on
episodes
Hulu.
that couldn't, yeah, because it wasn't organic and they weren't a real friend
Yeah.
group. That's why that didn't work.
Yeah, and that's what I'm scared of. I'm like, I just don't want anything like that to happen.
Right.
Maybe like one or two people, because not everybody on the cast was horrible. I think it was just like them together, honestly, that made it just not so great. So if they could get like one or two people from there and maybe some fresh faces and one or two familiar faces in the background, I think that they could definitely make that work.
I also think, and I think you would agree with me on this because I know you're a Teen Mom fan. What about the
I am.
idea of watching them separately like we do on Teen Mom or in pairs, right? Like the Toms going off together and doing their
Hmm.
business stuff. Ariana and Katie, we watch them together doing their sandwich shop stuff. Ariana
Right.
or Lala and Sheena being moms together, right? We could watch them all separately in one episode, but not necessarily all come together for James's DJ gig. You know what I mean?
I get that, and I would like to see that. I think that would be a good formula. But the only thing is, I feel like that's more Vanderpump Valley now.
That's true.
And it's like when it comes to Vanderpump Rules, the first thing that I think about is I'm like, oh, Lisa Vanderpump, this bar, like they're gonna be making cocktails and like mocktails. But I think that formula is so Vanderpump Valley, and it's like maybe if they do a big cast switch up, which I'm not sure if they would even do because honestly, I'm not a viewer of Vanderpump Valley,
Oh yeah.
but
Okay.
I do believe the cast that's there. I'm pretty sure people are adjusted to those particular people now.
Hmm.
Are you a fan of Vanderpump Valley?
You mean The Valley, like the one that they just did the spinoff with Jax?
Yes.
And yeah. So
Hmm.
yes, I watched that, and I don't think they did. Well, they just finished filming it, so I don't think they did any additions to the cast that they had from last year.
Okay. Yeah. See. Well, hopefully they can figure something out. Another Vanderpump Rules related question I want to ask you: what do you feel about Jets and this new podcast?
I hate to judge people's podcasts because we all have the right to a podcast about whatever we want. But like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
about like men's mental health, I guess, or something. That's what it appears. He did this episode, and I think that's where the idea came from. He had an episode of When Reality Hits where he was doing sort of like a listener mailbag sort of episode, and people were asking questions about relationships and mental health. I don't know why anyone was asking him questions like, what do you do when a guy cheats on you, and why do guys gaslight, and like, I don't know why anyone decided to ask Jax Taylor those questions, but he seemed so intrigued by it that it seems now he wants to do a podcast about it. So okay, I mean, I won't be listening. To me, this is almost replacing Sandoval because we had to listen to that garbage
Yeah.
for a while. Then he finally went away. Then he came back, and hopefully he's gone. Now we're gonna get another Jax Taylor podcast. Like, it's our job as content creators to have to listen to this crap just to see if there's anything interesting.
Yeah.
And I hate how they're taking up space in my like podcast, repertoire that I have to go through. I I won't be listening. Good for him if that's what he wants. I don't
I
I
agree.
don't know.
And we just got the ending of Raquel's podcast, and I
Okay.
honestly didn't even know that she was still going. Like, I was very surprised to hear that.
Okay, so I was thinking about it. Okay, so she did 65 episodes this year, which is
Hmm.
pretty good. So I'm actually impressed with how long that ended up going on for. I don't know if you know this. So the podcast is now still continuing. Now it's called Going Rogue, not Rachel Goes Rogue. Now it's just Going Rogue, and it's with her publicist, Juliet, who's a little bit of an oddball. Have you ever like seen this woman around the internet?
I think I
she's
have. Yeah.
she fights for her people, sure. She does that. She does a
Yeah.
lot of that. She has called me on my cell phone before and screamed at me. She's an interesting person. But she's the last few episodes that Rachel was doing were with Juliet, and they were doing
Mhm.
like Vanderpump headlines and Bravo News and stuff like that, like we do. But and again, everyone's allowed to have a podcast. But now it's just Juliet, and it's just called Going Rogue. And I tried to listen, and it was just more Bravo headlines, and I just didn't feel like I needed to
Yeah.
listen to another one of that. So that's still out there. But what was so funny was she ends the podcast, and then Tom is start my podcast and talk 1 week after she ends this thing. But yeah, no, a question I had for you on it was because I believe she started it in January. Usually podcast contracts are a year long, right? I wonder why
Yeah.
it's ending right now, like in mid-November. You would be almost at a year. So I wonder if there was some sort of problem that happened with iHeart. Maybe they said, listen,
Ooh.
this podcast is so bad. No one is listening. People are throwing tomatoes at the iHeart building. I'm making that up. But like maybe they're just like, listen, we want to part ways with you a little early.
I think, you know what? That's a good question. I never even thought about that. I'm like, maybe it was one of the things that she decided to do, I guess, just because maybe she wasn't getting the viewership that she was expecting. Like, well, when people listen, um, I don't think she was seeing the numbers that she wanted to see
For
when it
sure.
came
And
to
she kept
that.
switching it, right? Like she had it first about Vanderpump Rules, and then it was like mental health, and now it's like salacious rumors in the Bravo sphere. So what is this podcast? And so I understand and appreciate, trying to switch it up and to see what people
Hmm.
like, but it sort of seemed like it came to a point where it wasn't serving her or the public anymore. But I am curious if it was a her decision or a public decision or an iHeart decision. Because now she's saying, oh, I want to do this because I want to like focus on my mental health. But didn't she start the podcast because of her mental health?
Yeah,
Didn't
I
she
want
not go to Vanderpump Rules because of her mental health? So how many things are you doing for
to,
your mental
yeah.
health that are contradictory?
Because I want to say she started it just to like tell her side of the story,
Mhm.
like about what happened. And I think she did give like, I don't know if she gave an apology or not, but I was hoping that would be her intent anyway.
Mhm.
And I don't think she had to do a podcast to do that. Like,
No, I
that's
mean
what I
it's
was
the way of the
confused about.
future.
I was confused about that this whole time because I'm like, okay, you spoke your piece, and I would expect it to be over. Like, I thought
Right.
it would be maybe like a 3 episode type of thing, and then she disconnects, but she keeps going.
Right. And in the summer, I think she was at like an iHeart party or something. And I remember her being like interviewed and asked about the podcast and her saying, it's really brought a lot to my mental health. And I really enjoy
Mm.
doing it. And I didn't think I'd be the type of person that would enjoy doing a podcast because of public speaking, but it's done so much for me. So I actually am surprised to hear that she wanted to end it. And there was that other thing she also mentioned where she's now dating a rocket scientist. So I wonder if it has anything to do with this new boyfriend. And maybe he's like, let's get out of this entire
Now,
space.
see,
You know?
I wish she would have did that honestly instead of Sandoval because that sounds more like the Raquel that I knew and the Raquel that I liked. Like,
Dating
I
a
would
rocket
actually
man
like to
versus the
see.
Raquel you know.
Well, to be fair, it's like we knew she, even though she was like they called her the Bambi Eye bitch, we still knew that she was like educated.
Right.
Like aside from
Okay.
like all
Yeah.
the Vanderpump Rules stuff, so it doesn't necessarily surprise me. It's actually like I think I would like to see it. I think I would like to watch that on TV and see how they interact.
I don't think I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see her on TV again. Definitely not Bravo because I think she's
Yeah,
fully burned that bridge. But I don't know. I wonder if we'll ever see her on TV
They-
again.
I
Maybe
think
on a
maybe.
villain show.
Oh yeah, maybe
She is a villain.
maybe maybe something like on Peacock Traders.
Hmm.
If people want to see that, I don't know because I feel like as soon as they find out she's going to be on, they would be like, no, cancel the whole season.
Well, I'm annoyed that Tom Sandoval is going to be on the next season of Traders because I love Traders and I feel like it's going to
Yeah.
ruin it for me. Like, we don't need to give him any more opportunities. I'm fine to not watch him. Fine.
Oh, do you think that he is going to be a traitor or a faithful?
A faithful. And I think he'll be good at it, which sounds ridiculous, but his shtick is like doing a lot of things for other people, right? He's always handing
Yeah,
people money and running away. What was that thing he said? Did you watch this past season of Vanderpump Rules where he
I
it was in the
did.
after show where he said something about how he hands homeless people $100 and then runs away. Do you remember that? I don't
I
remember the
was just
context, but
like,
it went viral. Sorry, please
it
continue.
is crazy. Well,
So yeah, I could see him being like, hey man, hey, let's form an alliance. Hey,
yeah,
I'm gonna make everyone breakfast and I'm gonna convince everyone that we're really good, okay? And we're best friends, right? Like we're friends. And I could see him really overdoing it with trying to build alliances with people. That seems to be his thing.
yeah, I can see that as well because he's trying to build his fan base back up, I think.
Hmm.
That's gonna be interesting to see. But and I do think if he took a different approach this season, it would have been a lot better. And then he said some dumb shit earlier that we already called out. He blocked us, just in case
Oh,
you didn't
really?
know. He did block us.
That's
We literally
interesting.
have a whole highlight on our Bravo
I have to
page
go look. Okay, I'm gonna look at it. That's
about
interesting.
it. Yeah,
His
so
his band manager guy, Jason Bader, he blocked me, but
mhm.
not Tom. I'm blocked by Jason Bader.
That is random. You know
It
what?
is
I
pretty
kind of
random.
like being blocked though.
So I'm blocked by Jax, and so is everybody else. But the funny thing about that is, so I've recently like formed like a nice connection with his PR rep, Lori K. We all know Lori K.
Mhm.
So she tried to unblock me for me, which I'm like, of course you can. That's right. That's your job. You have access to his phone. She couldn't find me on there. She once spent an hour trying to find me on his block list and couldn't find me. We have now found out why. Are you ready for this? He has 10,000 people blocked, and
Why?
Instagram only shows the first 200. So that's why they can't find me because Mark Zuckerberg didn't plan for this to have to scroll
That's
through
too many people.
10,000 people. 10,000. So I'm
Oh my
permanently blocked, and
gosh.
that's just kind of my like badge of honor.
Oh, you're not missing out on anything,
Oh, I know.
honestly.
He's blocked everyone.
I feel
But
like
what's
if I
interesting
look,
with Tom
we're
Sandoval?
probably blocked too by Jets. Uh, you have some Dina Manzo tea, and I definitely want to
Hmm.
get into that before we head over to Netflix. What is going on in Jersey?
So a lot is going on in Jersey, and I love when Bravo and crime sort of crossover because I don't know about you in your like regular life, but when you meet people who aren't in Bravo, isn't it sort of fun when you could try to find a connection for them, whether it be like, hey, do you know that MLB player who got like defrauded out of like all of his money? That has to do with the Real Housewives of OC. Can I tell you how? So it's
Yeah.
fun to be able to make those connections. So I love when there's Bravo crime, and this one's
Mhm.
a pretty much of a doozy. It's a pretty good one. So Dina Manzo was on season 1 to 3 of New Jersey and season 6. Season 6 was the
Okay.
bad season. And she was always, I don't want to use this word, more demure in the show. She wasn't very showy. She wasn't really into the limelight. And she had a daughter and she was married to a guy named Tommy Manzo. Now, the funny thing about New Jersey is how everybody's related. So Dina Manzo and Caroline Manzo. Caroline Manzo was also on the Real Housewives of New Jersey, are sisters, and they are married, or sorry, were married to brothers, Albie Manzo and Tommy Manzo. So two sisters married to two brothers. Then Dina Manzo gets divorced from Tommy Manzo and starts dating a guy named Dave Canton. A little bit into that relationship, Tommy Manzo enlists a guy named John Perna from the Lucchese crime family to beat the crap out of Dave Canton, causing him physical harm. And he used a weapon called a slapjack, which I've never heard of before.
What?
And it's basically to like make him look ugly, because it's so funny that like men think of this, where it's like, hey, I want you to beat up my wife's husband so he looks ugly, so she doesn't want to date him anymore. So I assume that was sort of the mentality behind it. So he recently just got convicted for this. And sorry, the repayment for doing the slapjacking is that John Perna of this Lucchese crime family would get a deeply
Mhm.
discounted wedding at, guess what? The Brownstone. Okay. So he has this 330-person wedding at the Brownstone as repayment for beating up Dave Canton. And Tommy Manzo has now been convicted of racketeering and forging documents requested by law enforcement, and he's doing 7 years. So that's what's going on in New Jersey.
I would love to know if it was worth it.
Well, I think maybe it was to him, because a couple of years later, and this case is actually still going on. So a couple of years later, and this is alleged, so I can't say,
Mhm.
and he has 100% done it, but he has been charged, him and somebody else, for breaking into Dave and Dina's home, bounding them and beating the crap out of them. And so that case is still ongoing. And this is the case. I don't know if you remember this, but a few years back, Caroline Manzo wrote a letter of support for Tommy Manzo, and it was about this. She wanted him to be released on bail while he awaited
Right.
trial for beating up her own sister. So she wrote a letter of support for her brother in law to have him released on bail, and the
Mm.
charge was beating up her own sister. So,
I don't
New
know.
Jersey is interesting.
This kind of makes me feel like cameras need to go up. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is
Well,
what we need.
well, Caroline with the whole Ultimate Girls trip, I don't think we're ever going to see her on Bravo again either,
Oh,
because she's
yeah.
sort of immersed in that
Oh,
lawsuit.
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know
Oh,
that season of Girls Trip we're never going to see it.
yeah.
you know?
Do
So
you
I don't know if we're
think
ever going to see them again.
maybe Dina, just Dina by herself?
Well, so she posted something after he got convicted. I don't remember exactly what it said, but like, something, justice has been served, and I will be telling my whole story soon.
Hmm.
So that could mean a podcast, it could mean a book, it could mean a lot of things, right? Like everybody has their different platforms these days. Like you said,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like it needs to be a podcast, but it could end up becoming a podcast,
That's
right?
what I'm
Who
scared
knows?
of. Oh
Again,
my
everyone has the
gosh.
right to a podcast. Just make
You're right.
sure that you're doing it with longevity. If you just have something to say, that's a tweet, you know?
You're right. It's so true because I think they announced, since we're still on Bravo, that Senya from Housewives of Atlanta and Marlo, they're going to have a podcast as well. And I'm
Oh,
just like, I don't know. But then again, like you said, I'm not against anybody who has a podcast. Like we have a podcast, and I'm so grateful that people tune in and listen to us. So it's like I try not to go so hard, but with certain things, I just feel like you don't need to have a podcast. Because if you're on Bravo, I don't really think you have to talk about Bravo.
that being said, I mean, I do kind of like the Bravo podcasts where you are currently on Bravo and you're able to give us some tea. Like, I really liked when
Right.
Kristen Doty on Balancing Act, she would give us like a little behind the scenes of stuff. Like, that's interesting. Crystal Kung Minkoff and Cynthia Bailey's new podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, but if there's not going to be any tea, then I'm not really interested to listen. But again, to each their own. I'm a
Yeah.
person who likes podcasts only for Bravo tea. If you're a person who likes podcasts about like mental health or like children or like journaling, there's podcasts for all those people, right? There's a
Yeah.
racquetball podcast, I think, that Randall Emmett started. There's got to be one guy listening to that, right? So I guess there is a
Somebody.
podcast for everybody, but I don't know what I'm very curious what Marlo and Sonia would be podcasting about. Do you know what it's about? Do you know if there's a title yet, a working
I
title?
have no idea. I
Okay.
just know I literally seen the news drop today and I was just like, Marlo and
Hmm.
Sanya. Like what would they be talking about? Maybe they'll be covering like the new season of Housewives of Atlanta. And I'm hoping that they do that because I do like to see like say for instance, if you were on a franchise and you're no longer on that franchise, I don't mind coverage of that particular franchise. But I think
Yeah.
when they just do the whole broad thing and they start covering other shows, it gets a
Hmm.
little bit strange.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if you don't have any like specific connection to it, then why am I listening
Yeah,
to you talk about it, you know? I feel you. I am curious to hear
agreed.
what that's about, but it's very possible it has nothing to do with Bravo. So you never know. Like, does that podcast still exist with Lamar Odom and Bruce or Caitlyn Jenner? It's a podcast
Let
about
me
tennis, I think, or
see.
something like that. Or it's Keeping Up with Sports. Keeping Up with Sports. I think that's what it was called. So
Keeping.
again, very much a podcast that doesn't need to exist, but like Lamar Odom and Caitlyn Jenner's podcast. Now that's a stranger pairing to me than Marlo and Sonia.
Let me see. I wonder, is it still okay? This was 7 months ago. So
I've
I
never
don't
heard about it
think,
again.
yeah, I don't think it's still going on. Um, but did we really need it?
But we don't need a lot of them. That's the
Yeah,
thing, right? So yeah, I guess we'll see
it's
what
true.
happens with that. But it's a tough game, especially now with so many
Mhm.
people with podcasts. You need to sort of differentiate yourself and be original in some way. So you know what? Go off, Marlo and Sonia. Do it. Let's see what you have, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But
Agreed.
we're here to say we told you so.
Agreed. Agreed. So now moving over to Netflix, y'all,
Hmm.
you will be getting this episode on Wednesday, which means that the Love is Blind reunion is out. Now, is this something that you're excited for? Because I don't necessarily know how to feel. I had a bunch of mixed emotions about this season. I hated it, but
Wait,
I'm
why
kind
did
of
you hate it?
intrigued. I just feel like there weren't, like, we had two successful couples.
Hmm.
And out of the two couples that we had, I didn't really care about them all that much.
That's what I think it is. Like, I
Yeah,
don't think the season is bad. Like, it's had a lot of drama, but I think we just didn't have anyone we cared to root for. And maybe that's why it wasn't a successful season. Because I'm sitting here wondering, I'm
yeah,
like, why isn't this hitting? Why isn't this slapping? Because it should be. And I'm like, is it because we have so many Bravo shows? But no, I think it's because I'm not rooting for anyone. I don't care about anyone. There's no Lauren and Cameron for us this season. You know what I mean?
I agree.
There's no
I
golden
agree.
couple. Because even Ashley and Tyler, even if we like them, we're sitting there watching this wedding being like, we're side-eyeing this man because we still haven't found out this whole. I mean, we know on the other
Right.
end that this man has 3 kids and the baby mama is saying all these things and that he was very much a part of it and that the second 2 kids weren't even a sperm donor, that those were like his legitimate intercourse kids. And I'm curious if we're going to find out about that. So in terms of the reunion, I'm excited because there's so much we need to know, but I'm also pre-disappointed because Nick and Vanessa are so bad at facilitating reunions that I'm
Oh,
worried we're not going to get the answers to all of our questions. And I feel like I heard, because it's already been filmed, so I feel like I already heard somewhere that we don't get the answers to most of our questions
yeah.
when it comes to Steven, Steven has been all up in my comments freaking out, by the way.
Listen, ours too.
Oh,
There
really?
was two. He said, I think
Creeping me
he
out.
commented like on two things, and he was like, "Everybody hates me." Like it was something to the effect of
Yeah.
"Everybody hates me," or like, "Oh, this season was this like I was that bad." And I'm just
Yes.
like, yeah, like this was really bad. And what really sucked about it was just how they ended it. Like
Yeah.
we seen them kind of fall apart, but that was it. There was no aftermath.
So I think we've all talked about this on all of our podcasts that this season was very unfortunate in terms of missing all
Yeah,
of the fights. They just didn't have the cameras up for it. And so that was really unfortunate where every argument sort of had to be recreated. And especially with this Steven thing, there are just so many holes. Like, why were you drunk at a sleep test? Why did you have a sleep test scheduled? Who
please.
was this girl you were talking to? What did you say? What is your explanation for all of this? Because you literally haven't had sex probably in like 24 hours at this point, so you're fine. So what is your deal? Do you have some sort of problem? Like what's the issue? So
Right.
I don't know if we're gonna find out any of that. And I also think because Monica's so nice, she's not gonna throw him under the bus. That's just sort of the sense I got from like interviews she's done, that she's not really gonna come at him and that she's already like smoothed things over with him in terms of like her piece.
But this
But
is
I
where
think I have
Vanessa
questions.
needs to step in and snatch
Right.
that phone and be like, well, what did he say?
Hmm.
Let's at least address the text messages because she said he exchanged really disturbing text messages. And I'm like, I would like to know what those messages
I mean,
are.
he he gave us signs earlier on about things he was into.
Oh yeah.
So I I don't know, but yeah, I definitely want to see them. But you know what was so funny? Where like they have all this time to prepare, and that guy, what was his name last year? Trevor, right? That guy who had the
Mm,
girlfriend and like all the text messages. They bring him out on stage, and he's supposed to talk now and explain. Like, he has all this time to explain himself, and I just start walking over. Like I have the TV on, I walk over to start doing some laundry, and I don't hear anything, and I think the TV's broken. I go to look, this man is just sitting there dumbfounded, like
yeah. Can I
minutes and
go?
minutes and mouth drop. And I'm like, so I hope Steven comes in with, you've had all this time, even if it's a lie, come in with an explanation. Tyler too. Like, how is Tyler going to
Yeah.
explain this?
Oh, I'm very interested in seeing how he's gonna explain it because from what we've seen on the season, he made it seem as if like this was like a sperm donor type of situation,
Right.
and he wasn't really involved with his kids. And I'm just like, so what is the truth? Like, are you kind of involved with them? Do you know of them? Have you met them? Like,
Well,
what's
have you
going
seen all
on?
the stuff online from the baby mama?
I've seen so many things. I don't necessarily think that I've seen anything from her directly.
So it's one of them. You know what? I haven't seen it directly either. I heard about
Mm,
it, but it's basically explaining that the first child was a sperm donor. So she and her wife were lesbians. They were friends with
okay.
Tyler. He offered to give them sperm so that they could have a baby. And then apparently, shortly before the birth of the baby, one of the wives left the other. Um, and then during a drunken night, even though this woman is apparently like a complete lesbian, she and Tyler had sex for some reason
Oh,
and naturally conceived twins. My understanding, again, I haven't like read all of this even though it's everywhere, so I just sort of feel like I can't even like pinpoint it to something because it's been floating in our stratosphere
yeah,
for a
yeah.
while. But so I remember reading somewhere that he is very involved and he didn't want the kids to grow up without a father because he grew up without a father, so he was very 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 involved. That there's pictures of like his mother wearing like Christmas pajamas with the kids and saying things like on Instagram saying things like I love my grandkids and stuff. All of these things have apparently been taken down, but according to the baby mama, he hasn't had any contact with them since October 2023, which was when he got back from the show. So I don't know how
Mm,
Ashley can sort of reconcile that because even once he tells her all of this, which I'm sure he already has, how can she reconcile that he has had no communication with them in a year? Like is that the kind of man you want to father your future kids? Because, but again, I really don't think we're gonna get the answer because Nick and Vanessa are just so bad at this.
yeah, I know last season they weren't the worst. Like I will, because I'm always getting in Vanessa's ass about
Kelsey
something.
and Jimmy, we didn't get anything on why they actually broke up. Or no, wait, they got back together, but then we didn't really find out what happened there. So they didn't do enough with
Yeah,
Chelsea and Jimmy.
yeah.
I'll fault them on that one. But
Oh,
you're right. The
Megan
rest of it was okay.
Fox. Megan
Yes,
Fox,
Megan Fox.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not even gonna say hopefully they do better because I just know that they're not.
Yeah.
What did you think about Ramses and Marissa and how they ended off? Were you surprised about that?
So it's funny that I just said, like, oh, they missed all these fights. Well, we got this one, right? We got to see the
Hmm.
full thing, but I kind of almost wish we didn't because it was so emotional and so hard to watch. I hate him. He is obviously awful. Wait, are you on that same page with me or no? I just want to check before I go on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I don't necessarily. Well, did I say I hate him? Because
The
sometimes I
sex
do
thing
say
was pretty
things.
awful because like
Yeah,
I just don't understand. I understand what you're saying when you say you need to have mutual pleasure, but for you basically to say, well, like this is the only option, it just didn't really sound like he was considering any of her needs or what birth control
correct.
does to a woman's body, right? It changes your mood, it changes your hormones, it does tons of things to your body, but as a woman, okay, you have to deal with that for the sex, right? Like so he's not really thinking about that. And for someone who
Hmm.
sort of comes off as so liberal, which is sort of how he came off for the majority of the season, he really seemed to have a lot of very hard and fast opinions on things. Even the military conversation, you know, he
Yeah,
was really making her feel bad. Like I could feel that penetrating through me where she's like, I feel really judged by you. And I was feeling judged. You know, you really feel that from him. And so I was really surprised because she's seems like the kind of girl, Marissa, who can date anyone. She's has such a bubbly, lovely personality, and she can sort of see the good in anyone. So even though I'm looking at this man with side eye, she's like, no, you know, I see his good. And then so for him to turn it around on her and break up with her, I was surprised because she was willing to look past all of his things. And I
Yeah.
just don't really understand his reasoning because he just kept saying it's about like the energy, and that's just really difficult for a woman when you're not really like explaining what you mean. You mean just like her being alive and breathing, or like what do you mean exactly? So, oh, did you hear that she like asked him to get back together? She did like this Glamour article recently. Did you see it?
No, what?
Yeah, wait, do you want me to read it? It's really short.
Sure.
Okay, I'll read
I can't
it.
believe she would ask that.
I know. But you know what? Like, I've been in these situations too. Okay, so she said, we saw each other a few times after we broke up. I took the breakup really hard, as you can imagine from the scene of me crying and stuff. It took me probably 6 months to get back on track and to really start to move on. Hold on. In February or March, I did ask him if he wanted to get back together. I'm not really ashamed to say that because I'm someone who's like, if you feel it, you feel it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And he's like, nah. So after that, we just stopped communication. I remember looking at him and thinking, this is somehow going to fuck us up. This was probably the only time I thought this might not work out. So I can't believe he said nah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people judged her online for like kind of seeming desperate in that moment. But like I've been there too, and I was there when it wasn't being filmed. You have to remember, like she's being filmed, but it's like you
Right.
still have those feelings, and you thought you were gonna marry this guy 2 days before. You were like doing more wedding planning. So in that
Mhm.
moment, you're like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, please. Like I've been there. I get that, and so I don't falter for really still trying. I mean, I do falter for the 6 months later. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I hope she's moved on now
I
because.
think that's amazing though when you can have honest conversations about that.
Mhm.
Like because I think with me, I feel like everybody at least has experienced that once. Like where maybe you're going out your way for a person to just ensure that the relationship lasts and it doesn't end. Um, so I think my only problem with that was that it was on camera. Because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, like you're gonna have to look at this. Like
But we
your
asked for that,
family's gonna
right?
have to,
We were like, we
yeah.
want the breakup. We want it. So like for us, wait, so do you feel bad for her but happy for us? Is that sort of how you mean it? Or do you wish we hadn't seen it either?
No, I'm definitely happy we've seen it because it's
Okay.
like I needed to get that closure at least with them.
Hmm.
But I feel bad for her because it's one of those situations where I'm pretty sure she's gonna probably replay the season, and I'm sure her mom is also going to see this as well and
Hmm.
be like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't believe you," because you know how her mom feels about these type of things. We've seen that at that tape. Like her mom is very
Yeah.
like, I don't believe in love. If she probably seen her daughter doing that, she would be like, get up. Like,
Oh, and she
don't
recently
allow,
failed the
yeah.
bar too. That came out the other day. She just failed the
Oh
bar.
my gosh, how much can she take?
I know. And she failed by 1 point. I didn't
Here
know
I
that was a
am.
thing.
Oh my God. Oh,
It's not her either.
prayers for Marissa.
Wait, they
Um,
should make her the next bachelorette. I like her. She's really
yeah.
sweet.
You know what I think they should do as well? Maybe like an all-star season. Since you can't vet the cast right, Vanessa, maybe we can have a season with like all the people that we enjoyed from the previous season, some of the people that we hated, because it wouldn't be anything without them as well, like maybe two or three people. Um, and just call it the all-star season.
I think that's what they tried to do with Perfect Match, except it's like not just Love is Blind, it's a couple other
Yeah,
shows as well. But that show is, well, yeah, it's basically what they're doing because you have The Bachelor and then you have the raunchier version, Bachelor in Paradise. Then you have Love is Blind and the raunchier version is Perfect Match, right? Like Perfect Match isn't really
yeah.
intended to find your perfect match. It's just another Netflix show to go on. But yeah, I would love the idea of an all-star season, but especially because sometimes you can still find yourself or find your right person in this universe, just not the person you were matched with. It happens.
Oh, that would be true. That's true. Yeah, I think Perfect Match is kind of like Love is Blind meets Love Island.
Yeah, exactly.
And like,
Wait, but I really want to get your opinion on Alex and Tim because I can't decide how I feel about it. And I know we're past it, but I just really want your
ooh,
opinion. Who do you
hmm.
think was wrong?
I want to say Tim. I feel
Okay, I
like
agree.
Tim was wrong. At the beginning, I did feel like Alex had her ways, and there was
Mhm.
just this uncertainty that I felt on her end. Like, I'm just like, she doesn't seem very sure about this man. Like, even when he would do certain things, she would cringe. She would be like, this is
That's
super
true.
corny.
Hmm.
Um, but I think once he kind of like that first little argument that they had where he left and he's considered not coming back, I think she kind of realized how she felt about him. And
Yeah.
I think she connected with how she felt about him in the pods. And that's what helped them resolve that so quickly.
Hmm.
But seeing how he just like was so quick to give up, it was weird, it was confusing. I'm like, did I miss something? Is this really about her just falling asleep? Like
Hmm.
I just didn't understand that whole thing. Was this about dishes? Like what was it about?
I think deep down it was about respect,
Hmm.
but and disrespect for the parents. But again, it just needed to be communicated. But I think what he's trying to say is I shouldn't have needed to have communicated. But then the way he continues to communicate with her sort of makes no sense. Even in that breakup conversation, he's like, "Can you allow me to finish? Can I speak?" And she's not saying anything. She's sitting there waiting, right? He keeps like repeating it. Are you going to
Yeah,
allow me? Are you now going to allow me? Yeah, go ahead. Are you
because
going
he
to
didn't
allow me
have
to speak?
anything to
Go for it.
say.
Exactly. And nothing to say. So it just, can you imagine like texting your friends and being like, hey, like I'm not getting married. And it's like, why? Well, because she took a nap
I took a
and she
nap and
didn't
I
text me back,
left some
hey,
dishes in the
and she didn't,
sink.
and she left some dishes. Like your friends would think you're crazy for breaking up with someone for those trivial reasons.
Yeah.
Sorry, did she cheat on you? Like, what happened
So
here?
there had to be more. Yeah, I assume that like maybe something happened. Maybe she cheated on him. Maybe like he
Threw
found
in.
out something. Like I don't even know
That's true. I mean,
because
we've seen it.
yeah, like I don't even know what happened, but I'm really
He hates
excited
her
to
though.
see what Tim's side of the story is
Mm,
because we didn't really get much
yeah.
in that conversation. I also want to see how Alex really feels because it's kind of like she didn't really get closure out of that.
No, and it was hard to tell. But what really bothers me about the whole thing is the conversation that he had with her dad 2 days prior. Her
Oh
dad is
yeah.
not well. You read this beautiful speech. You asked to marry her daughter. I mean, that was just not okay. That was 2 days prior. Like,
And it
how
was
can you?
weird.
It was just
And then he put wings on the grill, you fed her family, and then you destroyed it all just like that.
maybe she has anemia, right? Like, like what if it's a medical condition and you ended the
True.
relationship? I mean, that being said, Ramses seems like he ended the relationship with Marissa because she has like PMS sometimes.
There was so
So,
many things. It's like, I don't know if this will last. And I'm like, well, she just doesn't want to be touched right now. Like, what's the big deal? I just don't understand. And he's like, oh, I don't know if I can deal with this long term. And then the military situation. I think he was just honestly trying to find a way to get out.
yeah, for sure. And you can sort of tell when they're doing that. But
Yeah.
it's just funny because when I saw them initially, when they first saw each other, they seemed so in love, so into each other. They looked alike. It worked. And then it just really didn't. And usually, I mean, I've watched enough of
Mhm.
this show where I thought I had a good enough sense of where I can tell if it's going to work out or not. And my picker is off, I guess, because those two went a completely different direction than I thought they were going to. They were the first to have sex. They had sex like day one of the trip,
Yeah, and
like
seems like
right
they
before
really had a
dinner.
great time. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel about Hannah and Nick? I feel like I just
Um,
have to ask you that because they
yeah,
were.
I feel like Nick is not like a great catch, but he's sort of coming off as like this golden boy because she was so awful to him. And just the way she spoke to him in this very demeaning, derogatory, I turned you from a boy into a fucking man sort of nonsense when
Mhm.
she's only 26 years old and doesn't have a job herself, yet is going on about stocks. The whole thing was fun. It was fun for me to watch. I enjoyed it. She's probably gonna like kind of be spoken to at the reunion about like or she'll have some reflection about like how she treated him and that kind of thing. Yeah, like I said, he wasn't a great catch either, but just the way she spoke to him was just really like, ugh, I really
I
didn't like it.
agree. I agree. But it's like I never would have guessed that she didn't have a job the way she was talking. Like I didn't even
Right.
think about that. Like I would think that she's head of the company. Like,
Well, okay, so I don't know much about stocks, but what I was hearing was that the way she was explaining her contribution to stocks didn't make sense. It was actually the opposite. You're supposed to like go low instead of high. Like again, I don't know. But whatever she
yeah.
said was the opposite of what actually made sense according to like the internet. So apparently she didn't know what she was
Mhm.
talking about when it came to stocks. I also sort of have the feeling, you know how she said she quit her job to
Yeah.
do this? To me, that means you quit your job to become an influencer and hoping that this would have worked out for that. Unfortunately for you, this is the like lowest rated season that's ever existed, so she probably needs to get a job now.
And you know what? I keep forgetting that she did say that. She quit her job to do this.
Yeah.
And it makes me think, well, are you as responsible as you claim to be? Because it would do something like that.
And let's say that is a responsible thing to do. Then work on that marriage. You
Yeah.
quit your job to get married, in theory, or come on the show, whatever. So take it all the way to the end. Work on it with him. He wasn't horrible. All he did was ride a duck, which was an ick, but still.
I think with her though, she knew that he would not be the go-getter that she wanted.
Yeah.
I don't think she could ever pull that out of him because let's face it, he's very comfortable with what he's doing.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's just in the pods we didn't really see that all that much. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
I know he spoke on it, but I just didn't think it was as bad as what it was once we got out of the pods.
I didn't realize he lived at home until we were out of the pods, but I'm sure
Yeah,
he had told her that. So again, Hannah, you just got engaged to a man who lives at home. So
right,
yeah,
right.
that was your choice.
Well, we'll see how these things play out on the Love is Blind reunion.
Wait, there's one more thing
Mhm.
that I'm kind of annoyed about. So we know that they didn't put Leo and Brittany on the Mexico trip
Oh,
because they
yes.
had a feeling that it wasn't going to work out and it didn't. But I'm annoyed that you know how they had that episode, it was like 20s night or whatever, and they had like Bode in there and they had Katie there. Why wasn't Leo there, right? Like Leo hasn't shown up for like the other events because I would have loved if they had brought him to Mexico just to shake things up between Nick and Hannah, because remember they had a connection. They didn't give us that, so
Right.
fine. You didn't bring him to like your old flames night, the night that Nick and Hannah ended up getting in a fight about that girl Katie. They didn't bring him to that, so he's gonna come to the reunion. But like there was all these opportunities, especially because Hannah was not that into Nick, for Leo to sort of swoop in, and they didn't bring him in to
Yeah,
cause mess, right? Like
I
I
don't
don't
know
think
if
they're
it
a good
was just
match. I'm just
like
so
maybe the crew was having difficulties with them.
mm.
Like, I don't know. He does seem like a difficult guy. I'm not
Oh,
gonna
for
lie.
sure. For sure. I just mean
So,
like, if you wanted to cause, usually in every other
yeah.
season, there's like that sort of, oh, I'm sort of interested in that other person I was talking to now that I've seen them, but they sort of did not allow for any of that this season.
Yeah.
There was no
Yeah.
shaking up of other couples by bringing in like other interests, really.
That's true. Just that's true because last season we seen it with, like with AD and with like
Hmm.
that whole cast and everybody. I was just like, oh, this is crazy. That
Every
little
season.
event that they had
Yeah.
was insane.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, maybe they need to take note and bring that back next season to just amp up the couples and kind of create some mess.
It's funny because they do make the decisions as to who goes to Mexico based on money and who
Right.
they think is also going to make it to the end. So it's funny that after six couples, we still ended up with only two at the altar. And last season, when they didn't send enough people to Mexico, we ended up with two at the altar. So it doesn't matter how many they seem to start with. It seems like
Yeah.
we just keep ending up with only two at the altar. So they might as well fork out more money because nobody's making it all the way to the end.
Yeah, next season there has to be at least three just to
Yeah.
make up for what we lacked these past two seasons.
Hmm.
Oh, but yeah, guys. Hopefully, now I'm nervous. I'm thinking about all the
Don't
possible
be
things that
nervous.
can happen at this Love is Blind reunion. And I can't wait for you guys to see it. I can't wait to chat with you guys next week about it. Thank you so much for joining me, Dana. I want to ask, is there anything that you're working on? Anything that you have coming out?
Well, I have a podcast and it's called I Take Bravo Very Seriously,
Yes,
as you can
yes,
tell from
yes,
all the
yes.
merch I'm wearing, if you're watching
I
this on
love it.
YouTube. So yeah, check me out on the podcast. It's I Take Bravo Very Seriously. You can follow me on Instagram at the Bravo Investigator and at I Take Bravo Very Seriously. And I am working on one other little thing I will just quickly mention. It's a new TikTok series called True Crime in a Bite-Sized Rhyme, where I am
Ooh.
telling you a true crime story in a rhyming format in 90 seconds or less. So I've done Jax Taylor, I've done the Chrisleys, and I've done Jay Cutler. So check me out on TikTok at the Bravo Investigator for true crime in a bite-sized rhyme.
Yes, do that. I actually have to check that out,
Check it
especially
out.
with the Chrisleys, because I'm
Yes.
very interested in that story. But yeah, guys, make sure you check that out. Make sure you subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Bravo While Black, and love you guys. Bye.